Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris Taylor, advocate of the devil. You may remember me from a series of videos about a children's card game that nobody actually watched.
Ooh, shiny.
Jesus, I was chunky back then.
That's what a soul weighs.
Those were shot in what I would call the Dark Ages, a time that I very desperately try to forget. Speaking of children, Pokemon. Beyond cigarettes, alcohol, and masturbation, Pokemon is the one addiction that I have not once been able to kick. Ever. And I know what you're thinking. It's nothing but a kid's game. If you're over the age of 10, you should be downright embarrassed at the fact that you're addicted to a children's video game. But here's the thing. Pokemon is far, far from something that only children can enjoy. Now, if I'm going to take the reins of the daunting task of defending something that was oh so clearly designed for toddlers, I'm going to have to go way back to the beginning. All the way back to the originals, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. The basic premise for this, and quite frankly, every Pokemon game since its original inception in 1996, is quite simple. You are a 10-year-old child who is sent on a mission to find and collect every single Pokemon in your world, while defeating the 8 gym leaders to collect badges that will allow you to take on the Elite Four, a group of super master Pokemon trainers. When that's done, you have one more fight against the champion of that region, and should you defeat him or her, you become the champion. Your major antagonists? A kid who's roughly the same age as you who chooses a Pokemon that can easily squash yours, if you're the kind of genius that only trains 1 out of 800 something total Pokemon, and an evil group of poison-type users that use devious means, like stealing townsfolk's Pokemon and beating up on old men, in an attempt to control or destroy the world. So, how do you do it? Well, in a kid-friendly version of cockfighting. No, not that kind of cock. Alright, there, that's a little better. Now, these Pokemon come in a wide variety of flavors. Some of them, like Pikachu or Squirtle, look really cute and tame. And they grow up to be vicious, vile murder machines that even Wes Craven couldn't come up with in a Freddy movie. The 3 legendaries of the lakes from Gen 4 are in control of other people's emotions. Hell, Darkrai lives by feeding off the nightmares of children, using its evil powers to create those nightmares just to keep living. All relatively normal kid stuff, right? Now, of course, the language used in these games is child-friendly. This is, after all, a Nintendo game, a company notorious for censoring games that are too racy or risque for their own tastes. But what about the idea that these games are just for kids? Ludicrous, I say. See, for one thing, these are role-playing games. Games where there's a ton of reading, which kids these days don't really have a lot of patience for. There's also a lot of elemental weaknesses and type matching to exploit, something the average 8 to 12-year-old may not even want to bother with. I mean, if you got a giant turtle that can walk on 2 legs and he's got freaking cannons attached to him, why wouldn't you want to use them all the time? The games are much easier to progress through with a team of well-balanced characters, with various strengths and weaknesses that all work together as a team to overcome any and all obstacles. Synergy, patience. A child craves not these things. And the opposition? In the original games, it's a thug group called Team Rocket. A group that acts as a terrorist unit to take over the entire world. They steal other people's Pokemon, take over an entire office building that doubles as a research facility for creating Pokeballs. The idea here is that by taking control over all Pokeball development, they, in essence, have a complete monopoly of who gets Pokemon in the first place, considering they'd have all the balls in the region. And how does this group get funding? A casino in one of the nearby towns. Gambling! Kid tested, mother approved. You know what else is hard for kids to understand in these games, but that if you're within the 15 to 35 age bracket that the video games are actually marketed to these days, you're bound to pick up quick? The entire premise of the game is to
destroy the evil power!
Well, not exactly. The goal is, when you really think about it, to have a child take over the world. In later installments of the franchise, you see that region's champion pop up all over the place. Usually where the evil team Rocket, Plasma, Magma, Aqua, whatever, is doing their evil team deeds. By fast traveling to all the areas and interacting with the NPCs of the world, usually the champion is revered, or at the very least looked up to. kind of like a prime minister here in Canada, or a president in the United States. It's not a huge leap in logic to say that the champions of these games pretty much run the world that they're in. Think about it this way. In the here and now, in the real world, we have adults who have absolutely no idea how to make breakfast, let alone run the entire country. You're telling me a 10-year-old boy is going to be able to grasp how to handle all the world's problems? Now at this point in the proceedings, I know what you're all thinking. Chris, you are seriously overthinking things. You have wasted entirely too much time pondering the going-on of a fictional universe. And to that, I say, okay, yeah, you're right, completely. I will be the absolute last person in the world to say that I never overthink things. You know who else overthinks things beyond all logic and reason? Competitive Pokemon battlers. That's right. See, in order for your team of 6 delightful little Tim Burton nightmares to be at their absolute best, you need to pick the right moves, the right style, fight against the right Pokemon in the leveling up phase of the game, train the right nature of your chosen little dude, have your fingers crossed that the hidden stats that get placed when you first encounter it or hatch it from an egg are all in the right spots. Sure, there are some children out there, specifically those who excel at math and have way too much time on their hands, who would take that much time and dedication to training their teams to be the very best, like no one ever was. But to know and understand everything that I just said, there are hundreds of thousands of pages of spreadsheets and man-hours going into what exactly goes into one of these teams. They're even tier listed like a fighting game. When I was a kid, I just used whichever one looked the coolest that happened to be able to learn Hyper Beam. Now, I'm a grown-ass man. I don't stand a chance. I hope, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary, that you see perhaps another side to the great debate of this monument to childhood addiction known as Pocket Monsters. About how the storylines both in your face and behind the scenes of these little creations of terror are in fact more horrifying than can be seen at first glance. At the end of the day, as it pertains to the games at least, there is a level of patience, strategy, and ability that most children couldn't possibly do. Feel free to let me know in the comments below what you think of this 2-decade-long fad. And if there's any flaws in my logic, by all means bring those up too, so I can prove you wrong.
Boom! Lawyer.
But as it pertains to the defense of Pokemon, for the time being, the defense rests.